he seems to be pleading with Netanyahu for some help. Like, send me some backup here. I don't know what to do. Like, that's kind of what he's saying the whole time. You guys got to find a way to completely reinvent how you're countering this stuff. Like, what are we talking about doing here, man? Because you're getting killed. The picture that is emerging now doesn't actually look so great for Israel.
Dave Smith just shared the truth about Charlie Kirk's letter to Benjamin Netanyahu in his final days that recently got publicized by the New York Post. What does it say about Charlie and what issues he was wrestling with related to Israel in his final days? Did he remain a devoted Zionist hawk, or was he turning away from Israel? And this letter makes that clear. Let's get his take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the Charlie Kirk letter to Benjamin Netanyahu. That was another big story that happened the other day. The New York Post published the full letter. Now, if you recall, the Benjamin Netanyahu, immediately after Charlie's assassination, had read a few lines of this, and the Candace Owens, as well as some others, had called on him to release the whole letter. And there's obviously, with something we've talked a lot about on this show, there's just like a very interesting story. This is something that's been covered pretty extensively by Candace, by Megyn Kelly, by Tucker Carlson, and we have on the show as well here talked about just like the dynamic of what was going on with Charlie Kirk and his young people, Israel bleeding support amongst his young people. And so anyway, this letter, the New York Post published this letter. Now, did you read the piece, Rob?
I did.
Yes. Now, I did notice in there, correct me if I'm wrong, I read the piece twice looking for this, but they did not explicitly say where they got the letter from. Like, they kind of like, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just jumped to reading the letter. I didn't even read their characterization
well,
of it,
I'm
but
reading.
I did pick up on that. It wasn't clear. I was just going to go, if you want to take it as fact that this was actually a letter from Charlie Kirk to Netanyahu, here's my thought about it. But, they didn't really validate.
No, but they did seem to just present it as fact.
Yeah, they did. To be clear, the article itself says that they acquired it on May 2nd. Kirk wrote to Netanyahu in the May 2nd missive. So they're dating it May 2nd, but they're not saying how they acquired it, whether it was from Netanyahu or Turning Point. If this was from a Turning Point email address, that they would have a copy of that on their servers. I know they could get that forensically, but the article doesn't say that, so Dave's right about that. It is interesting. I don't think anyone close to Charlie is disputing that this was actually him, but at the same time, I don't think they cite it.
Yes. We have obtained the letter. This is what the full letter says. And all I'm saying is, by the way, I said that not on air, but I did just privately say this. When Candace first called for Netanyahu to release the letter, I always thought it was like, yeah, but like if the letter comes back just saying none of the stuff you're saying is in it, you're just going to say that this wasn't like if the source on it is Netanyahu, then it just seems like a lot of people would think there's a possibility it has been altered or something like that. Now, I don't know enough, and it doesn't explicitly say. I'm just saying, like, if the letter was written to Benjamin Netanyahu, who has a copy of the letter, unless is like, oh, Turning Point had a copy of it too, or something like that, which it certainly was not explicitly said in the piece. So that'd be the first thing.
Yeah, confirmation bias, you can see that is true. People want to be confirmed in their mind what they already believe, and if a piece of evidence doesn't do that, they often just look for other possibilities or say that that angle is a fake. This is common in tropes and kind of mentality towards some of these issues and some of these narratives, no matter how you stand on it. I'm not saying that just applies to people that, embrace many of the conspiratorial aspects, and there's reason to do that. Our government is plain evil, so is the Israeli government, and people that just want to discount any kind of irregularities in Charlie's mentality toward Israel. Both camps kind of do this.
I will say, though, just assuming that's not the case, which I don't know that it is at all, this seemed to fit in, like, kind of be a piece of the puzzle that fit kind of right into what would have seemed reasonable to me. it's true. It does show you that, like, Charlie Kirk is calling, in a sense, for like Hasbro to get their shit together. You know, he's like, look, like, I'm in this position of supporting Israel, and you guys are getting, you know, he's saying this in a very diplomatic, kind way, but he's like, you guys are getting destroyed. And he doesn't exactly say this, but it did seem to me to be like a heavy implication that he's listing out the talking points. He's going, look, man, I'm taking questions from young people, and here are all the questions that they have. And then now, he doesn't exactly say it, but he's kind of like saying, like, we got to have a response to this, because right now we don't have one. Now, that is reading between the lines a little bit, but I think, Rob, you read the letter only a little bit. Like, that's kind of what he's saying the whole time.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. I think Dave is right. In the letter itself, he gets to this place about these things that he's hearing from young people. Israel's an apartheid state. Why does Israel conduct ethnic cleansing? Why is America subsidizing Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people? Is American aid helping to subsidize Israel's free healthcare? Israel and the Jews are running U.S. foreign policy. Defending Israel's not in our U.S. national interest. Those are all really reasonable things. And he is laying this out, that this is what he's getting from young people, and we have to have an answer to this. That's what he's getting at. But at the same time, at the beginning of the paper, he does say that everything written here is from a deep place of love for Israel and the Jewish people. He doesn't seem to have wavered on that, at least in May. If this is really a May 2nd missive, like the article says, and he says, I think it's important to be brutally honest with those who you love. So Dave Wright, is exactly what he is saying here.
You guys got to find a way to completely reinvent how you're countering this stuff. Like, what are we talking about doing here, man? Because you're getting killed in this information war. And I just think that there was, I don't know, there's something interesting there in this story that it still does show, because the story, you know, when people were trying to make the, like, Israel killed Charlie Kirk claim, like, as I always said, it was like, there was never any evidence for that. There still isn't any evidence for that. There's not really a strong reason to even suspect it or be looking for evidence. But hey, if you want to look for it, you find some, I'll certainly take a look at it. There's no reason to suspect that as of right now. Aside from that, though, there just is a really interesting story about this guy and the dynamic of what was going on. And like we've said before, it all seems to come to, essentially, yes, Charlie Kirk is the Big Tent Republican guy who's trying to get people to vote for the Republicans, Donald Trump last time, J.D. Vance, or whoever next time. And he's got to deal with young people. These young people are abandoning Israel in droves for obvious reasons that we cover at length on this show.
Yeah, they're jumping off a sinking ship. You can see more and more people not only jumping, but, you know, popular pundits at least questioning that. Megyn Kelly, just for having Marjorie Taylor Greene on her show and saying no one under 30 supports Israel, that's enough to put her in the crosshairs of AIPAC and the Israel lobby gunning for her. This is the case, and for the record, I have the same opinion with Dave and Max Blumenthal and Candace Owens. I don't see any reason that Israel was involved in this. Now, I will change my mind. I don't want to shut that conversation down. This is a story to me, regardless of that question. But if there's evidence linking Israel to the shooter, or a shooter if you don't think it's Tyler Robinson, I want to see that. I want to entertain that. I just haven't seen it. I think this letter doesn't show the motive that it would take either for Netanyahu to be like, yeah, this guy has to be killed. Like, he's praising Israel and trying to work with the cause. It's a guy that's writing to corporate and saying, please change these things. I'm on your side. We can re-steer this ship, but I'm not jumping on board. Now, some of the things he said after this in August and some other things that we covered do seem to be even more critical than some of the things he's laying out in this letter. So I'll give them that. But that's where I stand too.
And yet he knows that he can't, you know, he has to somehow try to facilitate that. Like, you can't have a big tent that doesn't include Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly or Candace Owens on the right wing. There's just not enough tent left. They're too big a portion of the thing. He'd already decided he's keeping Nick Fuentes out. He'd already decided there's this young movement that I don't want to be a part of. So he's in this position where like, well, I got to at least be able to moderate a debate on the topic. So he's in this position. Then he's getting all types of pressure because that's not good enough. You know what I mean? And his hardcore backers want him to. They insist that he treat Tucker Carlson like a Nazi.
Yeah, they want him to denounce and disavow Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, two of the biggest right-wing influencers on the planet, Tucker probably being number one. That's exactly. So just hosting that debate between Josh Hammer and Dave Smith was enough to raise the ire of this Zionist donor class that did not want to see a debate. They don't want a debate. They want Hasbara. They want Zionist talking points, not a mulling of what's happening in Gaza and consideration of the other side, that might actually not be in America's interests, by the way.
And he knows he can't do that. So he's in this impossible position. And here is this letter where he seems to really be, again, Rob, you give your thoughts after this. I don't think I'm mischaracterizing this. He seems to be pleading with Netanyahu for some help. Like, send me some backup here. I don't know what to do. But anyway, I mean, of course, as has been the case always, throughout the last few weeks since Charlie was killed, everybody's trying to kind of, manipulate this in their favor and say that this letter really proves this or proves that. To me, it just seems kind of like it seems to be right in line with what we've been saying since this thing happened, that, oh yeah, this kind of was the dynamic. Yeah, no, Charlie was probably not about to have some major heel turn on Israel. He was probably still hoping that maybe this genie could be put back in the bottle and maybe there'd be a way that we could get back to, the big tent Republican movement that's going to have super majorities for the next 30 years.
Yeah, I agree with Dave's assessment here. Now, it's worth repeating that this was May 2nd, supposedly. So there were several months between that and his death. He did raise additional frustration with issues related to Israel after that. But I think that's a plausible reading of this note, that he wasn't having an epiphany to discard Israel at this point. Now, Candace Owens disagrees. She says there's proof 48 hours before Charlie Kirk's murder that he did tell Turning Point USA he had to abandon the pro-Israel line. I'm waiting to see what she has to say about that. She kind of said it in a way where Turning Point should come out and say whether she's lying or not, say whether that's the truth or not. But that is, what she has asserted. So there's differences of opinion in this. But what I found so interesting in his letter, was that he had this place in the letter where he talks about Iran. Now, Charlie Kirk is a guy that did not want the war in Iran. He actually told Donald Trump personally, don't bomb Iran. It will be a disaster. He talks about that in the letter. We were promised there'd be weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which proved to be a lie. But I thought what was really interesting here is he said, Israel intelligence missed the boat on October 7th, but we're asked to trust Israeli intelligence 100% that Iran is on the cusp of obtaining nuclear weapons. Think about that. He's basically taking a shot at Israeli intelligence here, and this is kind of a blue-pilled outlook where you think that Israel just missed the boat rather than they allowed the attack to happen, which there's lots of evidence of. Egypt tipped Israel off to the October 7th attack 3 days in advance, and Mossad itself said they knew an attack was coming as much as a year in advance. Major publications covered that story. But he's saying young conservatives are very skeptical of government proclamations. And he says right now it seems like Israel is primarily relying on Americans to make the case for attacking Iranian nuclear sites instead of or Israel itself. Just so think about that. This is something that's very critical of Israel and definitely an offshoot from the Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin types that did want war. I think that's interesting.
But he was clearly struggling with this impossible situation. And it would have been, had he not tragically been killed, it would have been interesting to see what he would have had to do over the next few years. Because it does seem to be almost like, like Megyn Kelly herself said the other day, when she said that she said nobody under 30 supports Israel anymore. And this is coming from a supporter of Israel. She's just telling you what she's seeing right in front of her. Like, no one under 30 is supporting Israel anymore. And okay, no one's an exaggeration, but oh my God, it's not that much of an exaggeration.
Yeah, she's right about that. That's why she's being attacked, by the way. Just that, and hosting Marjorie Taylor Greene on her show is enough. Just allowing Charlie to air his frustrations about his character being questioned for minor critiques against Israel. That's why Megyn Kelly is persona non grata now to some of the most rigid Zionists. It's kind of funny to see. It's Zionists eating themselves, with Megyn Kelly still calling herself a Zionist and saying she's extremely pro-Israel. This is what's happening to her. You can't be halfway on Israel. You have to be either in or out. And that's the way it is, and that's the way they treat these people. Candace Owens talked about how this was exactly how she was treated when she tweeted, "Genocide is always wrong, no matter who does it." Think about that. That's the statement that raised their anger toward Candace Owens at the start.
And so, what are you going to do in that situation after a while? You got to figure out something. And so, anyway, I do think that is a really interesting story. Probably we all should have waited like a couple more months before we even started getting into this story. But Netanyahu started first and immediately politicized it. And then it's like, no, actually, I think we should talk about this then, rather than just giving you this kind of talking point. Actually, the situation, the picture that is emerging now doesn't actually look so great for Israel. Like, no, it doesn't exactly look like Israel killed Charlie Kirk, but it certainly doesn't look like they're like anything that makes their image look good. It's like, no, the story is about how young people who don't get their news from the old corporate media, who we all are in agreement have lied about everything, right? Now that they don't trust those people, none of them are buying your bullshit. That seems to be the story here, and it's not a particularly good PR story for Israel.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dave. That's why this is a story, regardless if you buy into Israeli culpability and those theories. This is the story. The fact that young people are discarding the Israel first mentality that their fathers and their fathers' fathers carried for so long and has been so pervasive in American politics, influencing Congress and the presidency and the deep state. That's a major story, and this is a microcosm on politics, not only in Charlie Kirk's organization, but imagine if those pressures were as palpable on Charlie Kirk as we've seen, as this letter seems to show. Just imagine how incredibly pressuring they would be on government officials, people that are close to the levers of power and have the ability to side with Israel in the Middle East or discard Israel in the Middle East. AIPAC and the Israel lobby is prevalent, and it's because of dynamics like this, where you see a wealthy Zionist donor class really controlling some of the voting patterns and bureaucratic decisions of our government. And man, Charlie was in that place. There is kind of a battle, a war of sorts, to make his legacy into what two camps on the right generally want him to be. But I think this letter, if you read it, and don't take my word for it, please do read it. This was posted on the New York Post. I think this shows what we've said, that Charlie was walking a tightrope between the Zionist donor class and younger people, and his opinions probably fit somewhere in the middle. Now, that's not as sexy as saying, I think he totally turned against Israel in this letter and some things that happened after the letter. That's not my position. But I don't think it's also correct to say that, he was just Ben Shapiro. He was just Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin. He would have promoted the Iran war. He would have not asked these questions. He would not have mulled, like, how do we re-steer this ship, if he thought all those things were in line, in order, it was totally justifiable. This letter wouldn't make sense either. So I have a nuanced view on this. I do think Charlie Kirk was wrestling with some of these issues related to Israel, but he hadn't made a turn. Certainly not. He hadn't turned away from Israel. He expresses his deep love for Israel and, a fondness for Israel in all this. He says it's out of love, and I believe him. I think that these are some genuine things that he's calling for to do that would help Israel's image. He's looking to help. He's not looking to, ransack or set up a massive turn. The other thing I want to point out is one more thing I thought was interesting is he suggests having some of the released hostages go on speaking tours in the U.S. That could be effective messaging, he says. And I think that's interesting because some of the hostages that have been released have been whistleblowers that said the IDF killed, several dozens of people on October 7th as part of what's known as the Hannibal Directive, that attack that killed 1,200 people or thereabouts by Hamas. Those deaths weren't fully attributed to Hamas. Some were the IDF ordering the killing of hostages such that they didn't get into the hands of Hamas. But of course, if Netanyahu did a speaking tour like this, he would hand select ones that didn't say that. But that's something he recommends. So he's listing off all these different options he thinks could improve Israel's image. And I don't think this shows what either of these two camps want to show about Charlie Kirk in his final days, but I do want to hear from you. Have you read the letter? What do you think about it? Does it show a turn away from Israel? Does it show a rigid adherence to Israel? I don't think it shows either, but I do want to hear from you on that. Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Please also subscribe to Dave Smith. Great breakdown of this letter. I think this is an important story, like I said, regardless of who you think killed Charlie Kirk. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support my channel. I'll tip my hat to you for that if you go to those links to support me, but I'll also give you the gift of getting each and every one of my members only episodes. Those are the ones for advanced viewing before they come out to the general public on YouTube. You have complete access to those at all times. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.